I want Hilary Swank in the next Terminator movie so bad.
There is nothing in this world that you give me to do to hug a robot.
It's because it's so incredible and intricate that it's impossible not to notice.
Music's the core of this movie.
I was born again to watch this movie.
You'll find redeeming things and you'll be thinking about it for a long time afterwards.
There was no bone saw.
Just John hamming it up over here.
2.5 out of 3 of us recommend it.
Everybody loves talking about movies. Let's talk about movies.
Good evening, podcast world. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast. So very grateful to have you all here with us again tonight as we talk about one of the most defining movies, I would say, of the turn of the century.
The Matrix.
A great movie shot in green, black, and skinny sunglasses. I don't know what else to say.
Leather-clad actors and rimless sunglasses, I think is a good way to describe it.
That's all I want in my life now. Except I want to be the leather-clad actor. No, I'm just kidding. But we got a good crowd with us here tonight. First off, we got Josh. What's going on, man?
Hello, hello, hello.
We got Vince. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing, Casey?
I'm living my very best afternoon. Soda in hand. Well, it was. Cheers. But here we are. And then we have a special guest tonight. Do you want to go ahead, Vince, and introduce our guest for us?
This is my buddy Tony. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Big fan of the podcast, and yeah, glad to be here.
It's been like we've been needing to do this for a while. I don't know how we got through. It was like the 12th episode, and we haven't had you on.
That's true.
And when we talked about doing the Matrix, I was like, I have a friend. I've talked to you guys about him before. He's the most 90s kid I know. He needs to be on the Matrix podcast episode.
I think you texted me right after I just hacked my PSP, and the person who made the hack for the PSP had the green characters scroll down. So I was like, coincidence?
I think not.
Destiny.
The Matrix heard us, and it was like manifesting something. It was like it manifested that you would be here this day.
Would you say that we have the one here with us?
Neo, is that you? So essentially, we're looking at talking obviously about a 20-year-old movie here. So I want to just give this warning right off the bat. This whole podcast is full of spoilers. So just be aware of it. If you haven't watched the actual movie yet, you really should. It'll bend your mind around, and you'll see that the spoon is not there, and that you had control all along. So
Also, if you guys want to watch The Matrix, if for some reason you're listening to this and haven't watched it, turn it off at least for the rest of August, maybe longer. I'm pretty sure it's just August, though. If you have an account, or if you make an account, a free account with Vudu, you can watch it on there for free. There's ads like every 25 minutes. There's like one 30-second ad, but it's well worth it. Just in case for some reason you've never seen it, turn it off, go onto Vudu, get an account, and then watch it on there.
Well,
and
yeah.
then come back and check it out.
Also, on August 30th, they will be re-releasing The Matrix, the original, in theaters, select theaters. So that is another way to watch it this weekend.
Exactly.
So yeah, guys, what have we been watching this week? What's kind of going down? Who wants to start tonight?
I can go.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty boring. Most of it's just the same. Just watching Community. I'm almost done. It's so good. I just can't say enough good things about Community, but I'll skip it because you guys have heard it. For
How many do you have left?
Like 6 or 7 episodes.
Ooh, you're cutting it close. You're getting there.
Yeah, I am. Today I watched the episode where the guy who was Subway comes back and he plays Rick, the Honda guy.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I even tweeted about this on my Twitter about how Annie has a quote where they're talking about guerrilla marketing, and she's like, they can advertise us without us knowing? That's awful. That should be illegal. It's like they're Windexing our brains. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I've been doing that, and then my wife and I, she wanted to watch a show, and we've been binging it ever since we started watching it. It's The 100, which I had never ever seen before, and we started watching it, and we're like going hard. We're almost done with season 2. And we started it like on Monday.
Yeah, your wife is obviously the worst. I need to let you know that.
Okay,
She messaged me and just spills spoilers, and then she's like, yeah, I haven't seen it that far yet.
Okay, I hate watching TV shows with my wife, okay? Like, to be fair, I wanted to watch this, and she said, no, like, I'll watch it with you every once in a while. But then we start watching it, and she gets like attached to the characters and stuff. But she's like, I don't want to get hurt when stuff happens, so I'm just gonna Google when people die.
No.
And I'm like, you can't watch movies like that.
No.
You can't watch series like that because it takes away everything from it. She's like, yeah, but I don't want to get hurt. And then when a big major event happens and a character dies, you know, because that happens in these shows, she still like bawled her eyes out.
So
Can I just share with you this exact conversation that Jaleesa and I had? I just want to share this. So
Oh man.
she like messaged me and she's like, someone died. I'm so sad. I was like, you can't live forever, you know? She's like, STFU, didn't ask. I just wanted him to live. And I was like, I understand. That was hard. And then she goes, oh, really? I don't think so yet. But no, we're not there yet. And so dies. I was like, you are the worst kind of person. Stop reading ahead. And she's like, I know, but I don't want to get attached. Like emoji raising hands. I was like, you're the worst.
No, trust me. I've tried so many times to convince her, like, this isn't it. I had to beg her and keep tabs on her when we were at work to make sure that when we were watching Stranger Things 3, she didn't read spoilers and know who died. It was so hard. I was like keeping like constant attention was on her to make sure that she wouldn't do it. Because when she does it, no matter what she does, she'll spoil it. Like she'll try not to, but she will. She'll just let it slip.
Yeah.
So. Anyways, that's been me. I've literally watched no movie this week besides The Matrix, so just The Community and The 100 now. So,
speaking of Stranger Things Volume 3, Season 3, I have 2 episodes left. And I love this season. I love this season so much. Like you
How
were
many
in
episodes are there?
There's 8. So
Okay.
I'm on episode so I have to watch 7 and 8 and then I'll be done.
I think we're on 5.
So you're right
I
behind
just
me.
haven't finished it, but I don't know the spoilers yet. I know there's a lot out there, but
Yeah, I've actually been like pretty efficiently avoiding them, surprisingly enough. I know one thing that happens that got ruined and it was kind of a bummer, but it's not a big moment, so it's okay.
Props to you guys for being able to not read spoilers like this far in, because I couldn't avoid them. That's why I deleted Facebook off my phone, was because everything that's happening, I'm like, I'm done with this.
Oh, I made my friends at work start a whole new chat window so they could talk Stranger Things because I'm so far behind. And I was like, you guys know spoilers. And like, should we go start a new chat? I'm like, see ya. So we haven't talked in weeks. So I got 2 episodes left of Stranger Things. I finished The Boys, which was an incredible, incredible TV show. Yes, it has superheroes, but I wouldn't say it's a superhero show. It's more of a corporate espionage and blackmail and all sorts of stuff. It's just so good. And then last night, I could not fall asleep for the life of me. My brain was just, I don't know why, just going a mile a minute. So at around 11:30, I got out of bed. I walked downstairs. I turned on House Bunny. You guys seen House Bunny?
no,
Nothing.
that is.
You guys. House Bunny is so stupid funny. It's
Is that a movie?
huh?
Is that a
Oh yeah,
movie?
it's a movie. Yep. And
Doesn't it have Emma Stone in it?
yes,
Oh, I think
I
remember
saw it.
seeing
I saw Emma Stone in Zombieland, and I was like, "Who's this? She is really pretty." And then a little bit later, I saw House Bunny for the first time, and I was like, "I'm in love." I love Emma Stone. She's so funny in this movie. It's a Happy Madison production movie, so it's really stupid humor. A lot of the jokes are not great, but man, I absolutely love Emma Stone. It's also got, I just spaced her name. She was married to Deadpool for a while.
No clue.
Yeah. Anyway, she's the star. Emma Stone does not star in it, but she's one of the like main side characters, and she's so funny. And it's still great. Last thing, I
Anna
finished
Faris.
Anna Faris. Yes, thank you. Last, I finished Euphoria, and that show is also incredible.
Heard amazing things.
It was so good. The soundtrack is so good in it, and the drama just keeps you coming back. Really hard watch, especially Tony. You got a little girl. It's gonna be hard watch if you watch it, because it's just like
Thank you
high
for that
school
tip.
drama turned up to 10.
Yeah.
11. I misquoted that. I apologize. And that's it. That's about all I've been watching.
Tony, you got anything on the doc you've been watching this week?
So the sad news. Well, I shouldn't say sad news. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and she's amazing. But since she's been alive, I haven't been able to get out to as many movies or watch as many shows that are not involving like The Wiggles or Sesame Street. So I have watched quite a bit of kids television for the past year and a half now. But today, while my daughter was sleeping, I watched The Matrix, and then after she woke up, I watched Rush Hour 1, the first Rush Hour, and that was really good. I don't know how people feel about Rush Hour, but I was loving it. I saw it in the theaters as a kid, and it's Chris Tucker it's amazing.
We referenced Rush Hour a couple episodes ago. I don't remember why, but it's come up in our conversations.
Yeah, I was thinking today as I watched it that Juntao, who's like the name of all of the bad guys and as one character that no one knows, would be a cool username on Counter-Strike or something.
Yeah. And my username will be House Bunny.
Perfect. That's about it for me, though.
I've actually watched a few children's shows when I go to the doctor, and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh. Other times I'm like, but what's behind that rock there? Like little Dora. And
yeah, my wife's come home several times and been like, "You're just getting too into these kids shows." I'm like, "I'm sorry."
My older sister's got 2 little girls, and she says the lore for My Little Pony is deep and extensive and really interesting. So maybe that's something that
I need to check that out. Right now, she's definitely like a sponge. Whatever I turn on, that's like it's a kid show. She's just into it. So I guess I can kind of guide her.
Yeah.
Show her the ways.
I've had a pretty, interesting week as far as television watching goes. I watched a lot of chef and cooking stuff. As I've mentioned, I love food.
And you cooked me burgers this week.
I did cook you burgers, didn't I?
Yeah, they were good. Keep watching those shows. Keep cooking for me.
Yes. Yeah, no, I just like cooking. I like food. I figure since it takes up 1/3 of my life, I may as well eat well. So yeah, watched a lot. In the Mind of the Chef. That one's my favorite, and narrated by Anthony Bourdain. May he ever rest in peace.
R.I.P.
He deserves sainthood. I don't think so. But then I actually watched a couple of films this week. One, I watched Baby Mama with my wife. I don't know if anyone thinks about that movie or remembers that movie very well. It's got Amy Poehler and Tina Fey.
I love that movie. That movie's hilarious.
It's great. Amy Poehler pees in a sink in that movie, and it's just the funniest thing because she just plays this hillbilly lady who's having a baby. It's great. If you haven't watched it, check it out. And then I hopped on and watched the reboot of the ever fabled Clash of the Titans. Have any of you guys watched that one?
Nope.
I have not.
Oh man, guys, it is excellent. And a lot of people will probably argue with me until they're blue in the face because a lot of people are like, the first one was good and then they did Wrath of the Titans and that one sucked and that's why it killed the trilogy. But loved it, recommend it if you have any sort of, excitement around the gods of ancient Greece and all that kind of stuff. It's cool. It'll pass the time and a little more. So yeah, that was our a week of film. Anything else before we kind of move forward?
No, let's do it.
All right.
Go.
So something we've been doing that's kind of exciting is this. What do you call it? Like a synopsis in a tweet.
Yeah.
Who wants to read off their tweet first?
I can go first. The Matrix. Leather-clad computer nerd with God complex literally hacks the mainframe.
It's a callback to something, Josh.
I hacked the mainframe. It's true. They do. All right. So mine is, like I think we've done in the past, mine is usually the new Twitter length. So it's a little bit longer. Nokia and rimless sunglasses present Question Your Reality, starring new effects for the 90s, Michael Scarn's bullet dodging abilities, and if you've never watched The Matrix for some reason, the guy from the What If I Told You meme. The Wachowski sisters present 90s Inception.
I got to talk about the sunglasses while you brought that up. That was a great synopsis. So Morpheus's sunglasses that he attaches to his nose that don't have the rims on the side. When this movie came out, I thought those were the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. I wanted a pair of those so bad. Does not hold up.
No.
You're thinking about it now.
All of the tech from this movie seemed so amazing. And then after I rewatched it, I was like, wow, that's not that cool anymore.
Well, because you look at this guy, not to jump to the movie too far, but you look at this guy who's a software developer at a major software development company. He's just sitting there on that little like 5x5 inch computer screen going hard. So,
But props to those guys back in the day. Thank you for setting up the grid for all of us to enjoy, because, man,
We had to start somewhere.
we had to start somewhere. But yeah, I'm glad I don't live in that era of time.
That was great, though, Josh. That was good.
I loved it. But I do want some of those glasses. Like, do you think I could get readers that look like that, just like my regular
That
glasses?
just clip on your nose.
Clip on my nose.
Down to the bottom of the ridge.
Look like a little Albus Dumbledore or something.
The sad thing is there's probably a name for those glasses, but the best way to find them would just be Googling Morpheus sunglasses.
What am I feeling today like wearing and wasting my money on? Oh, Morpheus sunglasses. I'm going to look so baller at 90s night. Tony, I know we kind of got you in there. If you were to make up a tweet on the spot, do you have an idea of how you tweet this movie?
So I don't know how I would, give a summary of it, but I was thinking about it today as I watched the movie and how some of this was like pitched, and I'm just like, did they like go into like a meeting and someone just like was like, all right, we're passing out some reading material, and it was just like Ghost in the Shell and the Bible. That's I literally like, I don't know. There's so many references and hidden things that I'm sure we'll get into, but that's all I could stop thinking about. I couldn't stop thinking. I was like, wow, there's another one. And I think it's because rewatching it, I was kind of looking for more this time, and boy, it was there. So
Oh, yeah. It's like, I'll bet you the night before the Wachowskis were just sitting in their dorm, like smoking weed, just be like, dude, what if none of this is real? And they're like sitting there like, we got to come up with something for the pitch tomorrow. And then one of them just turns to the other one and is like, that's just like, what if we're just in a simulation?
So I looked at a video actually, like on YouTube, and they talk about a lot of this referencing some of Philip K. Dick's writings. And Philip K. Dick went before, I believe, I could be mistaken, like the Senate, and literally said that we're in a computer simulation. Like, none of this is real. And when we experience like deja vu, that is the simulation having errors, and that's where they took
that's where they pulled that from?
like where they pulled it from, and where we'll get into it. But there's the cat glitch right there. That's a direct reference to that meeting.
Wow, that's
So
cool.
kind of random.
awesome. That's pretty cool.
I also have to shout out again a past episode. Last week we talked about Alita Battle Angel, and we talked about kind of how anime has influenced movies throughout the years. This is the perfect example. Couldn't get into anime a lot when I was younger. This pulls so much from Ghost in a Shell. That, from what I've read anyway. I haven't actually watched that one, but apparently like you said, a lot of the stuff comes from that, and it's like, this is it. It was awesome in anime. They pulled it and they made it good for the masses, or more palatable for the masses. And so I missed out on the anime, can't get in the anime, but I still get a little bit from this.
yeah, that's something that I think is really cool rewatching it this time. Is there's a lot of things that didn't hold up, like the Nokia phone and things like that. But it's interesting how they can sample a little bit of each comic book or reference or sci-fi reference and kind of mash it into this thing that you could present to people who are not as much of a nerd, and they can really like consume it and enjoy it. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
An entire altered state of mind, man. It's great. Sorry, that was like thinking about the Wachowskis. Can I do my little
yeah,
tweet?
I want to hear it.
I have to pull it up, and like I'm an old man to read it here. Leather-clad anarchists fight agents of the digital realm while expressly learning new skills, fleeing from squid-like robots in the sewers, and finding new skills from within prophecy and friendship. # The Matrix.
Aw, cute.
Gotta have that friendship in there.
Friendship. That was good. That was a
good.
very
That's
good summary.
my tweet.
That's the way it is, though. For real. So I mentioned it in my little tweet summary, but can we talk about, like, I watched it and I literally burst out laughing because the first time I didn't even think about it. But then there's that scene where Neo's, like, literally 10 feet from the dude, just, like, unloading, and the guy's, like, swiveling and stuff,
Unloading his
dodging
gun?
bullets. Yeah, he's just, like, and the guy's, like, swiveling, like, dodging all of them. And that's why I put Michael Scarn's dodging abilities.
Oh, I
'Cause, like,
completely missed that.
That
in
episode
there.
from Threat Level Midnight where he's like shooting him from like 5 feet and he's like pew, pew, pew.
I love that this episode is the most Office references we've actually had in the entire podcast to date. And this, I feel like, is the most serious movie of all
And
of
we're
them.
only 10 minutes in.
Okay, so let's kind of get into a little bit more. Did we talk about the budget and all of that kind of stuff?
No, I can hurry and run through that.
Cool. Let's go through that really quick.
Okay, so written and directed by the Wachowski sisters, released in March 31st, 1999, with a budget of $63 million. The worldwide gross was $463 million. So it's a very successful movie. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a critics gave it a score of 88%, and the audience gave it a score of 85%. It got a Metascore of 73. IMDb gave it an 8.7, and it was nominated for 4 Oscars.
Whoa.
Which ones?
Best sound mixing, best visual effects, best sound editing, and best film editing. And it won all 4 of them.
Makes sense.
I read, this is all according to IMDb, I guess I gotta throw that out there, but I read that it was like, for the time, I assume, like, swept the Oscars. It's the first movie that has swept the Oscars without winning a Best Picture nomination.
Huh.
Which is kind of interesting.
That is pretty interesting.
Casting considerations. There is a lot. This is what I love about a 20-year-old movie. There's a lot of information on the internet about this. So, the number 1 choice of the Wachowskis. Any guesses?
Fresh Prince.
Nope, not number 1.
For-
but
okay.
Will Smith was one of the considerations.
What if it was like Ben Affleck or Matt Damon?
Nope.
If you get a chance, look up the Will Smith. He tells a story, his side of the story, as when they asked him, and I don't remember, but there was another movie he filmed, but it's funny.
It was Wild Wild West.
Okay, yeah.
He's passed on The Matrix to do Wild Wild West.
I've
Let
never
that
heard
sink
of this
in.
movie ever.
How old are you when this movie came out? When The Matrix came out?
I was 3.
This is a question I really wanted to ask you guys. What did you see in the theaters? What do you remember?
I didn't,
because it does a lot for 1999.
Yeah. Sorry, just it's starting to echo. You're just coming back a little bit. Yeah, I was 12 years old when it came out. I did not see it in theaters though. My mom would not let me see rated R movies.
Yeah, so I don't remember. Let's see, 99. We're like the same age, I think. So I remember specifically seeing it not in the theaters later that year, because a month later after it had come out, Columbine happened, and that was a really big deal with the elevator scene. Which,
is that why it got its R rating?
So I don't know if that was the reason. I tried to do a little research on this because I remember there was a huge impact, and a lot of people thought that the Columbine shooters dressed exactly like Neo and Trinity in that scene. But I actually found out from looking that up that they were dressing like that before the movie ever came out. So there's really no tie-in, but definitely 90s parents were really shocked by that. But
That's what I read. It wasn't now. It was a few months ago before I did it. Is that The Matrix? I don't know if this is true, but it was going to be PG-13, and they were filming the movie. And then the Columbine shooting happened, so they were like, oh, well, they dressed the exact same, so we got to bump it to an R. So
That's a bummer. I remember when we were kids, I saw this a few years after on DVD. Like I said, I didn't get to see it in theaters, but, you sneak out of your mom's house and go watch it at your buddy's house. So when it came out on DVD, we went and watched it. And I remember having this conversation with my friends, why is this rated R? It makes no sense, And we assumed it might have been for nudity, because there's no swearing, the action's pretty tame. There's a lot of gunshots, but that's about it. And we're like, well, maybe it's nudity because there's that one scene when Neo slides down the ooze slide where he's naked, and we would slowly freeze frame each piece of that to see if we could see anything, any of his naked body. I don't think we could see anything, but we were also on those CRT TVs or whatever they are, CRV, whatever. And so, the picture quality wasn't very good, and so we were just, slowly picking apart each frame of that scene. Can you see it? Can you see something there?
And
Is
as you
that what
pause
you're
it,
doing?
there's the little static that's across the screen too. So there's some parts you can't see.
that's awesome.
So anyway, back to casting considerations. Will Smith was one of them. The Wachowskis' number 1 pick, Johnny Depp.
Ooh, yeah.
Let that one sink in.
No.
See, I think everyone sort of has that same reaction.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
It's like that meme where it's
Yeah.
this person takes a swig of liqueur. No.
What's that movie called where he just became the internet? Transcendence.
Yeah.
So I guess we can kind of visualize.
He did his own Matrix.
The production company's number one was Val Kilmer or Brad Pitt.
I could see both of those, especially like late 90s, because Val Kilmer was kind of still like, he'd been Batman at this point, right? And he'd also been the dude from Top Gun.
He did The Saint.
He's done a lot.
Willow.
Val Kilmer was hot. Yeah, Willow, the classic. My wife loves Willow. Other casting considerations were Tom Cruise, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Nick Cage. And
No.
you don't want Nick Cage in this?
Yikes.
Nicolas Cage, is he good or is he bad?
It would have been a lot more like, die, motherfucker, die.
And the most interesting of them all, they did everything they could to try to get Sandra Bullock in this movie. They offered her the role of Trinity. Mm-hmm. She didn't want it, so they went up to her and they were like, "We will change Neo's sex to a woman if you will play Neo." Whoa. And she turned it down still.
See, I think that she would have been a great Trinity. I think that would have been amazing.
Oh,
They must
Sandra
have really
Bullock
liked Speed and just thought that duo needed to be back in that movie.
It's interesting looking at these because a lot of the casting choices were like actors from that like performed in the same series. So with Trinity, Gillian Anderson was considered from X-Files, and also for Morpheus. It was for Neo too. I don't know why I didn't write that one down, but the guy who plays Mulder in X-Files was also considered for Neo. So it's like, and then for Trinity, Michelle Yeoh from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, she'd have been great.
And Chow Yun-Fat was considered for Morpheus. And so it's like they were taking these movies that they loved, and they're like, we love that person, and we love that person. We should put them in our movies, you know?
Yeah.
Just to run through a couple other ones. Trinity, Janet Jackson was also considered for Trinity.
What the hell?
Don't know about that one. Morpheus, Samuel Jackson was considered.
I could see that.
Gary Oldman and Russell Crowe, and then Chow Yun-Fat. And then the Oracle, they tried to get Sean Connery to come be the Oracle. And some stuff happened. He didn't end up doing it.
That would have been great.
Isn't that crazy? They're just kind of all over the board with this one.
That is super crazy. It's just like everywhere from like every person imaginable. Like some of them you're like, oh, I can definitely see that. And some you're like, these are great. And some of them you're like, no. I would never want that ever.
Well, I guess there's hopes in the future since some of these roles are programs. They could,
Yeah.
be Samuel Jackson.
So they just be like, oh, this was his outward, or his inward presentation. Isn't that what Morpheus explains? Is there the way that they look in the Matrix? Is there the way they see themselves in the mind's eye?
Yeah.
Man, I look awesome. No, thank you for that. Any other fun facts or anything we need to know?
No, that's about everything. You want to jump into the movie?
Yeah, let's jump into the movie. So from here, there are definite spoilers ahead. Just go in there. If you haven't seen the movie, feel free to pause this, come back in 4 days after you've watched it. There's the commercial version on where?
Vudu.
I was gonna say IMDb, but there's the commercial version online for you. Otherwise, let's just jump right on into it. What were your first impressions of this film? Like watching it today, on how it's aged, how it's dated. Kind of, what do you think of it? You can start, Tony. I see you got lots to say.
So the first thing I noticed, and I did kind of revisit as soon as I knew we were going to do this episode, I kind of looked online and I wanted to see what other people had said since it's been so long, 20 years now. So I remembered from when I was a kid and watched it, but I'd say the first thing I noticed was, and this was pointed out by everyone, but the tent or it's a green, and in certain parts of the movie, and then the other hue is like blue. And so I thought that was really cool. And then as I heard people talking about it, and then as I was rewatching it, I just kind of found it annoying, honestly. I don't know if that's weird to say or if anyone else caught that, but I liked it at first, but then it's something I couldn't stop thinking about. Every scene I was like, wow, it's really green. It's really green, like in the Matrix at least. So yeah. I don't know. It's definitely like very memorable. Like I remember always seeing the trailers and everything, as the trilogy came out, and just seeing, the green and all that stuff was so cool, but rewatching it, I don't know. I didn't really like it. Yeah. That's something I couldn't stop thinking about.
Wasn't that like a choice to like reflect the old green coding screens or something like that? So everything in the Matrix had the green tint because of that, and everything in the real world was more of a regular color scheme.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting choice. I didn't even notice it watching it, I'll be honest.
That's true. I didn't either.
I didn't notice it, but I watched a video where they're talking about the differences in that, and suddenly I realized, oh, yeah, I recognize that now, but it didn't bother me. But you read it beforehand, so that's why it affected you. What about you, Vince? Any thoughts about kind of what happened over the last 20 years?
So this is every 90s like 14-year-old boy's dream come true. Like, I remember being a kid watching this and being like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Why am I not Neo? This guy, I mean, I didn't really care about computer programming back then, but the idea of being the chosen one who can just plug into a computer and learn anything you wanted and become the most powerful kung fu artist in the universe was just like, I want to be that, you know? And the fight scenes were just amazing. And like, there had been nothing that had come along before this that was anything like this, right? And it's just like such a game changer for me as a teenage kid. I just wanted more. I just wanted to consume more and more and more. As the sequels came out too, I guess the general consensus is that they're not good. All I remember about the sequels is that the fight scenes were so cool. That's where I was at when I was, when these movies were coming out. It was just like, this is awesome. Give me more. I didn't understand any of the philosophical stuff, but man, the fight scenes in this was just like blowing my 14-year-old mind.
So like, that's the thing, is that this sort of set the standard for the new, for the turn of the century, for a new age of filmmaking, for what fight scenes should be. And honestly, when you look at it today, like 20 years later, when I was watching it, I was tempted to be like, this is so like cheesy, like all this fight scene stuff. It's so crazy. But when you think about it in context, they were like the first people to do some of this cheesy, in air quotes, stuff. So it wasn't cheesy then, because they were the ones who started doing this. And even though it was big over the top action, it was because they were able to sort of bend the rules in the Matrix, right? And so if you think about it in context from when it came out, they really revolutionized both, like from a storytelling standpoint with the intricacy of what the Matrix is in its own story, as well as the action setting up for this new world that just loves action films.
Yeah, I can't think of many other like post-apocalyptic world movies either. I mean, we had the classic and one of the best movies of all time, Waterworld. But other than that, like this was the first like post-apocalyptic action movie that came out that just kind of was ahead of its time in a way. Mm-hmm. And it was very reminiscent of Tron.
I was thinking that today too. Tron definitely came to my mind.
Minus
Journey.
Speaking to what you were saying, like kind of how it inspired like over the generations, right? After this movie came out, by the middle of 2002, which is three years later, the bullet time sequence, it had been spoofed in over 20 different movies.
That's crazy.
From Shrek.
Which one was that? The one where he does the bending, or when he stops him?
The one where he does the bend, where he falls over backwards and dodges the bullet.
That's so crazy.
Shrek also does like
also
the slow-mo leap.
Kick. From Trinity's kick at the beginning, because that was one of it was in Shrek. They also used the bullet time stuff in Kung Pao Enter the Fist, if you guys have seen that one.
Great movie.
I love having you here, Tony.
I love that movie.
Casey and Josh just keep looking at me like eyes glazed over, like, what are these old movies?
I have a friend that's 35 in Alabama, and he will sometimes just text me quotes from Kung Pao. So.
Oh, I could be his friend.
Oh, man. I want to bring up the question that we probably all think about, and we all ask ourselves every single time we watch The Matrix. The red pill or the blue pill? You yourself, if you had to choose from living in a lie but you didn't know it was a lie, or leaving the Matrix but living in a crappy world, what would you do?
I have a question before you answer, and then you can answer, Casey.
Yes.
Am I being told that I'm the chosen one?
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Because like if you know you can like change the world, did he tell him he's the chosen one like when he told him to take it? I don't think he did, right?
I can't remember.
No, he essentially gave him
The ultimatum beforehand.
The ultimatum and big ideas. The thing is you can't tell someone that they are the one and then be like, here, try this, but you can go back and live a lie.
Which
I think he gave him enough like ideas on what he could become, but he didn't like be like, "You're the one, Neo."
Well,
It was pretty quick into it though. Like once they're on the ship and everything, the whole he was hitting him with some big ideas.
Yeah. And he kind of manipulated him too, because he's like this computer programmer who's bored with his job, who's like living this nightlife as this secret hacker, selling it to a bunch of goth partiers. I don't know how to.
I felt like this show is what like that part of the movie, right? Is what I imagine like the 90s to early 2000s in Sweden being like dark gray, lots of leather, some dark clubs, a few raves here and there, and just some.
You're not too far off. The entire movie was shot in Australia, and that whole scene in the nightclub when they're out partying is a real club out there. So they went there and they used the actual club because they wanted to, of course, get that like feel, but they also wanted people comfortable, like people who are comfortable wearing that style of clothes.
Okay, but in that club was that the real Rob Zombie Dragula song that we were?
I really hope so, because this type of stuff, this is where I got excited, and I was like, these are all my favorite songs. Because I remember when I was like 10 when this came out, and my dad was a wrestling coach, and so I'd ride, like my school had Suburbans because we're a really small school, and the Suburbans were cheaper than, the bus, and I'd get in with like my dad and the guys, and they'd like put in the music on the way to wrestling tournaments. They'd like play all this music, and my dad would be like, well, this music sucks, because he just listened to country. But I remember like that's where I got listened to like interested in like Rob Zombie, Limp Bizkit, like Hoobastank, and like all this type of stuff. Korn, yes, and Korn. I was gonna say that's also where I got Korn from. One of those guys gave me one of their burned CDs, and I remember like smuggling it home so my mom and dad didn't find out. And I turned it on for the first time, and I thought like Satan was coming into the house. But yeah.
So I guess wrapping back around though, I feel like Morpheus was. I mean, Neo was this bored computer hacker living this boring day life, just looking for a meaning. And Morpheus comes along. I understand why he did it. He's being told that he's going to find the chosen one that's going to save the world, But he comes along, he's just like, yo, Neo, you're bored. You want to do something more with your life? I can show you how. And he just kind of manipulates and just kind of hints at things.
I love that scene because he just makes it so ominous, because when he talks about the red pill, even though he's very clear about what'll happen, he's like, or do you want to take it and see just how far the rabbit hole goes? And so he's all like creepy and stuff. And so it's crazy.
Who could turn that down,
But we're saying like if you had to choose,
I'd take the blue pill. I'll be honest with you.
What does the blue pill do again?
The blue pill is that you'll live in ignorance.
I'll happily live in ignorance. I'm not gonna lie to you. Pushing against things is hard, and if I'm like, oh, my life is gonna change all of a sudden, like I'm all for adventure and the excitement of that potential, right? But I don't know what's out there. It could be risky out there outside of the Matrix. He's like telling him like everything's gonna change, and even though my life might kind of suck, at least I'm kind of comfortable. He's got IKEA catalogs to fall back on. That's a reference to a different movie, but
well, so for me, I think I would take the blue pill as well, because I don't know, just ignorance really can be bliss sometimes for me. And so that's what I thought about. I really thought about, like, the reason I wanted to ask is because I really thought about this, like, what would I do? And I'm like, dude, it's got to be the blue pill.
After you saw that you got brought up on a ship and got a couple rags for your clothes, yeah, I like the way you said that, because it really is true. The way that Morpheus presented that, there's no way that anyone in that position would have been like, this sounds awesome, and then it's like, why do my eyes hurt? You've never used them. So I think I agree. After thinking about it, I do understand what's his name, Cypher that wants the blue pill back or whatever. Yeah. I thought about it a lot more this time around, and I can see the benefits of taking the blue pill. So I don't know if that makes me a jerk or anything, but
no, I agree with you guys, but
damn it, now I want to take the red pill.
I want to be really good at kung fu. I want to jump across buildings. I want to have super speed and catch bullets. But I'm trying to look at it from like the perspective that Neo was in. Like, he had no idea what was coming after. We have the benefit of looking at the movie and being like, oh, life is hell outside of the Matrix. I don't want to deal with that nasty mush food. I don't want to deal with robot squids coming and trying to kill me. Like it's a terrible life outside of the Matrix, and living in ignorance sounds great. But not having that perspective and having someone standing there in front of you and being like, it's like, I came up with a religious background, right? If someone came up to me and they're like, "Do you want to know what happens after death? I can show you." Like, how deep do you want to go into this? Do you want to keep going just like in living on faith, or do you want to like find out what is real?
Yeah,
That's a hard thing to turn down, you know?
True.
It's just like, what could be? You could get these answers. It might not be answers that we want, but man, that mystery it's intriguing.
Well, isn't that kind of what the whole thing is about, though? Because you start out with like, right, Follow the White Rabbit, the Rabbit Hole, Lewis and Carroll, which is written by, just forgot his name, but there's like some symbolism in that, and then we go into like this whole film, and there's just a variety of symbolism, like, right, Trinity's name literally like reflects back to the Holy Trinity. And so it's kind of like, okay, like there's a lot of it in here. So the idea of like this whole thing is to lure you into, I feel like, some sort of sense of longing and wanting to belong. Because it's kind of like becoming a pirate, right? Nobody joined a pirate ship or a pirate crew because, like, great, 8 months at sea, man, scurvying it up. No, they joined it because of the opportunity to find gold, to plunder, to pillage, to destroy, and to get rich. And so that's literally Neo's opportunity here. And they're going on a hover ship called the Nebuchadnezzar. That's pretty pirate-ish. I don't know. That's how I feel, at least. So, sorry.
Have you guys... Sorry, I've been, like, dazing off into the distance, like, recently. Just, like, wondering, have you guys considered the entirely real possibility that something like The Matrix is happening in our world?
I have. I remember sitting around in high school and talking, I mean, not necessarily like a simulation, but like, what if this is all a dream, the whole Inception idea. I feel like at some point everyone kind of questions your reality. Like, are you guys here? Or are you guys just like something that I've created in my brain?
Because
do you really have personalities, or am I just projecting?
Thanks for creating me, Vince.
For me, I always thought about it like, because I also came up from a pretty religious background, and so I always thought about it like, what if God is real and everything, but he just tests everyone individually, like everyone's put into their world and everything around them is all like simulated, and you're real, but everything else around you is just made up to test you. And so I thought about that. I also thought about this a lot, even not thinking about The Matrix, just over like the past year, because I was in a philosophy class, and Descartes, so he's the one who says, I think, therefore I am, but he only says that because he's trying to determine what is truth, and he can only determine that because he says that's the only thing that you can really prove, like that you exist because you can think. And one of his main things that he talks about, he's like, we can't prove that there's not like a demon that's like controlling our minds and making us see all these things that we think that we experience in physical sensation. And so I've thought about this a lot, like over like the whole past year, just like, it drives me crazy sometimes. Sometimes I will literally I'll be working, I'll sit at my desk, I'll be doing my work, but I'll just be like, what if it's just all pointless? What if it's not real? What if this is all garbage? It doesn't mean anything.
Well, this is just a made-up construct that we go to every day. Like, who literally designed the fact that we have to go to work and work for other people and make paper to take home and pay bills with? I don't know. It's just a weird thing. And plus, like, most currency right now is digital, right? Like, I can't tell you the last time I actually really was like, I need a $20 bill. Mm-hmm. Nope, never. I can't even think of that. So it's all digital. So, I mean, I used to think, honestly, and this might be a little weird for some, I used to play a lot with like Army Men and G.I. Joe's, kind of the same as, any boy kid did, was like you had your toys. And I used to think like, oh, I can control all these Army Men. What if somebody's just controlling me to control these Army Men? And I really thought about that for a long time. And I remember I was like 8 or 9 when I first was like, what if I'm a Ken doll? What if I'm like a G.I. Joe? What if somebody's controlling me and I'm just they're speaking, kind of like in the Lego movie, right? How that's all really happening and going on, and it's like, but it seems so real. I don't know.
And so that's bringing back around. I think that's why I would have a hard time turning down the red pill, because to find out what is out there is such an interesting thing. But if I'm looking at it as I know what's coming, I would take the blue pill.
It's true. See, that's the thing, is that I think about it and I'm like, even when I think about that and my mind just goes crazy, I eventually am able to relax into, I'm fine with this reality. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not like living some crazy amazing life, but I'm perfectly fine with living here and believing that gravity is real and spoons are real. Like I'm super down for all of that because it makes it so much easier. But it's really fun to think about.
So my other question is along this thought line, this process. Are you okay with the idea of being a slave, a food to a bunch of robots? Like if they were to tell you that before you take the pill, would that be something that you're like, well, no, I don't want that?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Like,
As long as you don't have to know.
As long
about
as
it.
you're rich, like Cypher or whatever.
Yeah.
you
well,
get red steak all the time.
Dude, that steak looks so good.
I know.
It was so tender.
it was blue. It was blue.
Every
That's
time
why it looks so good.
that scene comes up, or if I've rewatched it, I'm like, dang, I'm in the mood for some steak.
Yeah, next time we watch this movie, let's
That's the theme.
order a bunch of steaks and sit around and watch steak and watch The Matrix.
I'll cut my facial hair like his.
Oh no.
That weird little like wispy
Yeah.
like Howie Mandel thing.
I don't know how he couldn't figure out that Trinity wasn't into it.
Dude, it was the 90s. What?
Oh, you're right,
Anything.
you're right.
Jinkos were cool.
That's true.
No, that's a great discussion and kind of I don't know what like really like if you were put in a situation today where just someone showed up at your front door and was like, Vince, I have to tell you something.
If it was just someone that showed up my front door, I would say no.
Well, what if it's someone you knew and somewhat trusted?
Or in Neo's case, he was doing a bunch of research on Morpheus. Like
Yeah.
that first scene where he's laying in front of his computer, he's like got a whole website up. One of the most 90s looking websites you can find, just that has this giant title. It's like Morpheus, and then all of the information.
black and
So
white
he was looking for these answers.
And also Morpheus has been like telling him things that there's no way he could have known, right?
Yeah.
Without some other extra power. So
That's
he was
true.
intrigued. All of these discussions are the reason why The Matrix was so revolutionary. Because even today, you can have incredible, thought-provoking discussions about the themes of The Matrix and like its main questions. Its main idea is to make you like question your reality, and it's doing that 20 years later.
Yeah, it goes pretty deep with all the symbolism, like obviously Trinity, but I didn't catch it until this time, and I didn't see this on a spoiler, but I think they're mentioned often. But you know, we go throughout the movie, and it's Neo, and then Mr. Anderson to the what are they called?
Agents.
The agents. But then at the beginning of the movie, you hear his first name is Thomas, and that's the beginning where he's doubting everything. So there's a biblical doubting Thomas
Dang, I like
thing.
it.
So I caught that one this time. It's pretty cool.
Speaking of the names of the characters, when 14-year-old me was told that Neo is an anagram for one,
Galaxy
my
brain.
my brain just like, whoa,
He's
that's
the-
so deep.
I didn't know that till like right now.
But yeah. Oh yeah.
My mind is blown right now.
You're welcome. It's pretty interesting though. Like each one of the characters, like you said, their name has a representation. I was kind of reading some of the different ones. One of their ideas, we kind of discussed this earlier, was that in the Matrix, what you imagine yourself to look like, or the perfect you, is shown in the Matrix. So when Neo is let out of his little pod, finds out that he takes the pill, they find him, they nurse him back to health. He's nice and healthy, and they're explaining the Matrix to him. They tell him like, whatever you see yourself in, your inward expression of yourself is what's going to show up in the Matrix. There's a character in the movie named Switch. Their original idea for her character is her inward expression was female. And so outside of the Matrix, Switch, which of course the name, she would be switching genders. Outside of the Matrix, she was a man, but her inward expression was female. So whenever they were going to have her, whenever she was in the Matrix, be a female character. I thought that was really
That'd have
interesting.
been really cool.
Yeah, but apparently we weren't ready as a
It was
people back then.
1999.
1999.
Yeah.
Another one, APOC, is short for apocalypse, which is another biblical name.
Got that.
Morpheus has some deeper meaning that I don't remember what it was, but it's kind of cool that each one, even the Nebuchadnezzar, had some deeper meaning to it.
Yeah, that's the name of crap. It's the king of like the Babylonians who took the people away at one point, I think. I don't know, I can't remember.
And then you have Agent Smith.
Yeah. So,
he's my hero.
do you remember, Josh, last episode you said that Alita, sorry, I'm bringing that one up a lot. You said that Alita asked a specific amount of questions throughout the movie. Do you remember what that was?
Like what the questions were, or
No,
why
just the
I said
amount.
it?
The amount of
Oh,
questions.
I
that
have
she
no
asked.
clue the amount. I had just watched, what was it? I think I watched the Honest trailer, and they were talking about how they tried to set the exposition for an entire series, like in the exposition of this movie. So it just showed her. It was at least like 15 questions, like throughout the first like 30, 40 minutes.
So in this one, it's like the amount of questions that Neo asks in this one is just as bad as in Alita. It's like 20 questions throughout the movie, and the first like 40 minutes of
That's true.
the movie is just Neo. Like, it's very few words that Neo actually says. It's the perfect role for Keanu Reeves. I love him to death, but he's not the best actor. He's awesome in his fight scenes, and his
Vince,
roles
you might-
were. I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate.
We're in the summer of Keanu. You're gonna get some backlash.
Let
man.
me just say, I love Keanu.
We all
Reeves.
do.
Cough, cough, Point Break.
But he's at his best when he's fighting, and up until John Wick, this was Keanu Reeves' like peak. Like, the fight scenes in this movie are so cool. One of my favorite parts throughout the movie is the training montage. You find out, Morpheus is teaching about the Matrix, that the world outside of the Matrix is destroyed. They're actually like, what is it, 100 years later? Like, didn't he say it's like 200 years later than what they actually believe that they're in?
2199.
Yeah, he says about.
And then he starts training him, how to use the Matrix to benefit them, so that they're able to fight these computer programs that are stalking them and trying to kill them. Which we should get into that into Agent Smith and those guys too. But I want to talk about the kung fu scenes in this and the training that he does. How cool is it that they just jumped right into that? They kind of give you a bunch of exposition. Neo's constantly asking questions, but for some reason, I'm really into the answers that they give. And then they just like drop you into one of the coolest kung fu scenes since like what? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
So it was the same choreographer who did all the fight scenes for The Matrix. Was the same person who worked with Jackie Chan, Jet Li, all of them, like post Bruce Lee. So I read that online, so I don't know what his name is, but it definitely shows in this movie that they're amazing, like the fight scenes.
Well, because it's really awesome. You have the fight scenes and you have the kung fu, and even though they're doing just like regular kung fu, it's also him challenging him to bend the rules as well. And so it keeps you like in that like pretty classic like kung fu style, but it's also challenging like the reality, so that it can keep the story moving along as well, because it gives us that fight scene that we love, but it also moves the story with what he wants to do, running up a post and backflipping over him, only to get kicked in the chest and fall. But
What's kind of like during this, are we talking the kung fu scene now?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of at this point where he's receiving his education. He's the Padawan, whatever you want to call him, and he's kind of going through this experience, right? And you always think about it when I jump into the digital world, right? Back in those days, especially, that you had all the skills and the attainable things, because games were preloaded. You really didn't have to like level up at this point. And so it's kind of interesting that he's learning in a digital environment and he has to level up. He has to figure it out. He has to understand, find his footing, essentially. And I thought that was something pretty cool thinking about today. That's because cool. I remember, I can't even remember what game, like, you think about Donkey Kong, right? Which I was super obsessed with in the 90s, playing like Donkey Kong Country 2 and all of that. And your guy was just as it was. You just had your thumbs, and for me, it was my thumbs and toes to work this out. But really, like, you were just on your personal thing. Your character was leveled up to max. And so as he's learning and Morpheus is training him, and it's like boom, 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 figuring it out. And he falls, and you recognize that even though he is in a digital world, he still experiences symptoms and experiences like I would if I were jumping in this digital world myself today.
Yeah, I got that out of rewatching it this time. I really focused on the fact that this is about bending the rules. It's not about how fast you are. We know you're fast. We're in a program. We just taught you all these things. Like, show me what you can do. And it's like, that's a perfect example, like video games. It's like, cool, you learned how to shoot a Hadouken. Like, let me show you how to punish a move. Like, you know what I mean? So It really was about bending the rules. And I really, like, when I was a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go play some Street Fighter or something. But after rewatching it, that's all I could think about was like, oh, you need to bend the rules to break this game.
That's such a cool concept. Is it? And Morpheus explains it to him throughout this fight scene. It's like you don't have to learn how to do these. I mean, we upload it into your brain so you know how to do these things. You don't have to learn how to manipulate, or how do I put this? You don't have to learn. You don't have to train. You don't have to get strong. You don't have to, practice this. I mean, you do, like you guys said, but you don't have to like lift weights to like be super strong. You just have to be able to wrap your head around the situation you're in. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that makes Neo special, right? Is not that he is the chosen one. He becomes it, but no one, even the Oracle, when he goes and he talks to the Oracle, even she's like, tells him what he needs to hear. Like, no, you're not the chosen one. Sorry. Maybe next time.
Yeah. Sorry.
And then, but as the movie goes on, like you're saying, he's learning how to manipulate the Matrix. He's learning, like, he's starting to be able to wrap his mind around, like, what I see is not real. And can you imagine how hard that is to, like, if me and you were sitting in this room and you told me, like, no, dude, that's not real, like, bend the spoon. And then I would be able to wrap my mind around, like, that's not real and the spoon would bend. Like, that's what makes the chosen one, is his understanding and his like 100% belief, right?
He was looking at a marker. He tried right now, but
it definitely made the ending make a lot more sense to me, because there's so many questions from this movie from my remembering as a kid, but it started to just really stand out that it's like it literally has nothing to do with him just being a total BA. It's like it's more mental, like. You didn't like. I think I started thinking more about when Morpheus told him, "Your body makes it real." Like that really sunk in. Before, when I was a kid, I was just like, "Oh, whatever." I don't really understand why he's coughing up blood, but
yeah. Well, I think that's a good call out, Vince, because really the reality of it is he had to learn it, and not to quote The Rock from Hobbs and Shaw, but got some smarts up here and over here, putting in the work or whatever he says. But really, like, Neo had to figure it out all with his mind, because really when he's laying in the chair plugged into the the server or whatever, he's really only using his mind. The rest of his body is just a husk. And so I think that's pretty cool to think about, really. And when you talk about, like, it is his mind that makes it real, so essentially Neo finds his belief in that, like, literally, like, right, there's that first major scene right after this where they go to the rooftop, right? And Morpheus jumps, like, from a building, and Neo just watches him soar. He's like, whoa, Neo is amazed. And then, he, like, kind of, like, gets hyped up, and he's like, I'm going to do it. And everyone's like, nah, he's not going to do it. And then Mouse is just like, well, what if he does? And he falls. And what's crazy, though, is that the program, right, is designed so it's like a trampoline. It bounces him, but then it drops him the second time. So he still experiences that, so they know, so that they can teach him as well that what you experience there, you'll experience externally as well, which leads, if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life type thing. It's a lot.
It's cool.
That was a mic drop almost.
the way Morpheus jumped is laughable.
It's laughable now. Back then, I'm just like, whoa.
I was like, whoa, he jumped. Watching it this time, like, he just looks like he's doing a straight up Mario jump.
It looks like that most basic thing that you learn in, like, your beginning Photoshop class, that you can just have someone, like, jump, and then you can just, like, take them off the screen and then tell them to, like, run up, and so then you can, like, drop them back down. Just, like, the funniest thing, but back then I'm just like, whoa, how'd they do that, man?
Mm-hmm. That brings up my favorite thing about these old movies. We went on for an hour and a half, maybe more, on The Dark Knight of how cool practical effects are. This movie is just as good. 10-year-old, 20-year-old movies, they didn't have like you guys said, they didn't have the computer effects that we have nowadays, so they had to get creative with how they did these things. A ton of this movie was practical. Wire working for the kung fu scenes. All the actors, they trained for like 6 months before they even started doing these kung fu moves. Keanu Reeves, he had was it a back injury or a neck injury? He's basically wearing a neck brace through half of his training. But being Keanu Reeves, the awesome guy that he is, he kept pushing with his training. And if you notice, you go back, I read this after, if you go back and you watch it, Neo doesn't do a lot of kicking throughout the whole movie. It's because he couldn't do it after his operation.
Like you were saying, Lawrence Fishburne is, like, in the best shape of his life.
Oh, yeah.
In this movie. He looks great. So good. Sorry, Casey, go ahead.
He could carry me over the front door. But no, really,
John Hamm will be so jealous.
John Hamm will be here too. They'll carry me together. But no, what's really interesting when you think about it too is you're talking these like practical effects and these moves and the actors really like getting into the condition and shape that they need to. What I thought was really cool is the movement of how they kept it all like to something that you and I could do too. It was very cool, but it also was very practical. Something that I could go and learn these moves myself, which also I think this movie probably inspired a lot of folks to jump into, you know, karate and kung fu, because I feel like there was a resurgence because the 90s kind of killed out kung fu movies, and then this movie kind of like re-energized it with the fact that you don't have to be, you know, like of Asian descent or in an Asian thing. You can be a guy in a, you know, pair of black leather trousers and you can kick butt, you know. And I think that that's something that's very cool too, is it felt like I could do some of these stunts, not all of them obviously, I'm not Neo, but it felt cool. It felt like, oh, I could be a part of this. Even then and even now when I was watching, I was like, man, maybe I should go down to like the jiu-jitsu gym down here and like start going on Tuesdays, because I watch them. We walk by at the dock and I'm always like, man, I should join in. That looks like fun. So I mean, after I watched this movie, I was kind of like, I'm gonna go. I didn't.
Well, that's always how it is, right? You're like, I'm going to do something, and you never end up doing it. We mentioned wanting to talk about the agents a little bit. Can we talk about Hugo Weaving? Did you guys like him, dislike him in this movie? I loved him.
Yeah, I thought he was
for
great.
me, personally.
I wrote my notes that it was perfect. Like, the agents are kind of a weird type of character to digest a little bit throughout the movie, but just, I don't know, looking back on it, he's a great actor. That was amazing.
Well,
I loved it.
Because that's a really hard, like you said, that's a really hard role to play. Even though you are a character in the Matrix, you're quite literally like a program, you know? And so it's like, how do you represent something like that while still like building your own character? And so I thought like Hugo Weaving, he did a great job. And so even though he's been in a ton of stuff, obviously since I'm a big Marvel fan, and I'm just like, all right, and Red Skull as Agent Smith.
Well, what's kind of interesting, I think, too, is we get 3 agents in this movie, right? I can't remember the other two's names. They weren't very memorable. What's crazy about them is they have the abilities to just, like, take over other, like, actual people. And I think that's kind of, like, a crazy thought, too, is, like, what can consume you, Vince? Like, what could take over your life, you know, like, in an instant? And I don't have a real example of this, of what could do that, right? But maybe road rage, if someone like cuts you off, you know, you become the Hulk for 45 seconds and scream obscenities and flip the bird, and then you're done. But in this case, like, Hugo Weaving, like, one, his acting is astounding, but two, think about it, like, he's essentially playing a faceless man. He wears glasses, he has to pertain the same composure the entire time, and he can't show frustration or anger or anything like that. And he's essentially experiencing what I can imagine this computer program's first hiccup in the system or first glitch in the system, right? And he plays it so well, like the tones of his voice and the ability that he has to, you know, portray it. I didn't feel like he wasn't a computer program, but I also didn't feel like he wasn't human too.
Oh, yeah. I guess I forgot about that part where he sort of tries to escape the system, where he talks to him and he's like, I want to be more, or something like that. So I guess that makes more sense.
That was the most
interesting.
Sorry.
No, sorry. That's why he was great. That's all.
Yeah, that was the most interesting part to me about that character, is he is as much of a prisoner in the Matrix as all the people are. That scene where he's talking to Morpheus when he has him chained to the chair, he ends up kidnapping him, and he's interviewing him. He sends the other 2 agents away, and he takes out his earplugs so he can like have this like moment, just the 2 of them, and he's just telling Morpheus how disgusting he sees humanity.
Smell them.
He smells them. He tastes them. He's just like hates being there, and he's just like so driven to get rid of this city that they keep referencing, Zion. He just needs to get rid of that place so that there's no reason for him to be stuck in this, what he views as like a hellhole, you know? It's such an interesting thing that even a robot, a program, is imprisoned as much as humanity was.
Well, kind of what's interesting about this is it develops a little bit further as it kind of goes forward into the other movies. So I don't want to like give away major spoilers, But what's interesting is Agent Smith has been there through different iterations of the Matrix. And so I feel like he's getting tired of the experiences of choice and all of this that's happening within it, and he just wants to end it. Because I can't imagine like being, what do you call it, sentient, like having the ability to think for yourself. Because his job essentially is he's like a white blood cell. He's supposed to find
The
viruses.
virus,
Yeah, the viruses. I was like, bacteria? Like
The bad stuff.
he's supposed to find the bad stuff and get rid of it. And I can imagine that he's tired of it, because if that was my full-time job, I'd hate it.
Oh yeah, it'd be terrible running around for forever trying to hunt down these people over and over and over again and keep failing and just be surrounded by these people you hate and just want to be out. Like, yeah, he's not in a good place.
No. Poor guy.
Yeah. Tony, you took a lot of notes, and we've a lot of times glossed over or just like skipped sort of and like, oh yeah, that's cool, and moved on. What else did you take notes that you wanted to talk about on the podcast today?
Oh, sorry, I've got a ton here.
He does. I've seen he like has his phone out, and so that's why I'm like, there's a quick lull. I'm like, Tony has got the stuff we need to talk about.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I glossed over this time. That I don't know. It's a great trilogy overall. There's just so much I didn't understand, and I still don't understand. Some of my notes are just questions. I didn't understand a lot of it, but I know in the third movie, when we find, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into spoilers on that, but it's talked about at the beginning of the movie when he first gets on the ship and he's explaining the history of the Matrix. He talks about the man in the center of the Matrix, and I was like, excuse me? Because I missed that the first time I watched it, and then as you watch the trilogy, obviously that makes more sense. But I don't know, I think the movie as a trilogy had a couple issues because some of the characters are replaced by different actors, things like that it made it's a lot to take in. And so it's a great movie to rewatch. I mean, I made a whole list of notes of just different things that stood out to me. Yeah, I don't know.
That's cool. I missed that completely. They're referencing the architect, right? That's
yeah, he literally explains in like 2 sentences. He says that, and if you've seen the trilogy, it just a light bulb went off in my head. He literally says a man was put forth he freed the first humans and then explained to them what was going on, but he said inevitably, I can't remember the exact thing, but if you're watching again, that's something to definitely like pay close attention to. It'll help you, because when the second and third movie came out, in my mind, I'm just like, yeah, Rage Against the Machine, let's do this, Neo, and was totally like every movie I came out with tons of questions because I was more in the 90s. Early 2000s. It was all about the action. Mm-hmm. So,
which when you're talking about Rage Against the Machine, I just loved that the credits song was Rage Against the Machine, and I don't remember the exact song was, but they're all like, "Is this real?" Like, "Wake up" and all this other stuff like that.
Yeah, it's so funny.
So yeah, it was really great.
The second and third one end with a Rage Against the song
thing?
as well. I think. I'm not sure if all 3, but I know either the second or third does.
That's awesome. I guess one thing that you said you had a lot of questions, and so I don't know if I can think of anything specific right now, but I guess that was one of my only nitpicks, was that even though the movie is great and the story itself just like holds up and making yourself want to question your own reality and everything like that, a lot of times transitions from one plot point to another could be really fast and like not make a lot of sense. So I guess like if we talk about like nitpicks, that was like one of mine, because we moved past all this stuff because like effects, the way it looks and everything, it's the 90s. Like, you got to have some tolerance there since it's such an old movie. For me, that was one of the things, because I remember when we got to the point where, even though it was cool, where they're like downloading the stuff into him, I was just like, where did this come from? Like, how did we get here?
Came from the PSP.
So yeah, anyway.
I just wanted to shout out a couple of things before we start kind of wrapping up the movie. The helicopter scene was super cool, and they put a lot of work into that practical effect on the glass exploding slowly outward.
That was really cool.
They put 3 months of research into finding a type of glass that would do that, and the scene almost got cut from the movie because the place where they were flying the helicopter was illegal to fly, and so they actually had to have Australia change their law in order for them to bring the helicopter in and finish the scene.
Well, thank you, Australia.
Yeah.
Shout out to Oz.
They filmed in Australia because the budget for the movie was only $60 million. Started out at about $20 million when they pitched the movie. They got the funding. Long story short, they went and they shot the first scene of the movie where Trinity does the bullet time, took that to the executives and said, this is what we want to do, but we need more money to do it. And they immediately went, yes, here's $40 million more. So thanks to the bullet time sequence, which was like amazing back then, they used 120 cameras in order to get those bullet time scenes where they wrap around the characters as they fight or dodge bullets or whatever. Anyway, back to what I was saying. They filmed in Australia because if they would have filmed in the U.S., it would have cost them $180 million to do it.
Oh my gosh!
So they saved $120 million to film over in Australia.
Wow!
Thought that was kind of an interesting little fun fact. Now I'm going to go into some Keanu Reeves is a freaking awesome guy facts real quick.
Your redemption.
Yeah.
For saying.
Can I talk about one more little practical effect really fast? So there's a scene where they go and they reach for some doorknobs, and actually the camera is actually hidden in plain sight right there because they painted the camera to look like the bottom of Morpheus's suit. Another cool thing to go along with that, and I don't know if someone's brought this up. I'm super tired today, so I may have missed something. But in Morpheus's glasses, when he's taken the red versus the blue pill, it shows him reaching forward for the red pill, but also sitting back and out of the way for the blue pill.
In the other lens.
Yeah, in the other lens. So each lens is individual. So shout out to Morpheus's glasses again. And then one last random little thing like that as well. There's a time when Morpheus is talking to Neo, and you can see Agent Smith and his gun in one, and then Neo doing some action in the other one when he's talking about like how either he can win or fail type thing.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of interesting. Sorry, I just hadn't thought about those until this moment, and I thought those are really cool, like, effects.
To add to what Vince was talking about, that scene, if anyone's listening, look that up on YouTube or whatever. It's actually really cool how they did it. And I was looking for it this time because I knew what to look for, not as a teenager. But the way that they shot those pictures all at once to create the 3D wraparound, the scenes, if you look closely, they're CGI. The background is what CGI, and they used all those photos. So they had to kind of cover up all the cameras as they did a 3D effect, or a 3D wraparound, I should say. And I actually thought it looked really good. The rooftop scene, I guess you didn't really have to do much. It's just sky and like the top brick part of a building, but it looked great. I don't know. I was looking at it for flaws, and I was like, wow, this really held up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely agree. Like, because there's some parts where you look at it like when he jumps and everything like that, and so some of the effects you're like, oh, it's like so 90s. But then again, it was also, there were some things like that where even now you look at it and you're like, that is crazy that they did that back then. So it's visual effects wins and everything, and editing wins at the Oscars hold up completely.
Wire work is all super cool. Shout out to the shootout in the bottom of the building when they're going to rescue Morpheus. That's all done practical. They actually had pieces of the building exploding. They actually had the actors doing flips and cartwheels on their own wires instead of using stunt doubles. And then I just want to shout out the end of the movie where Neo is fighting Agent Smith and comes to the realization that I am the one, and it doesn't matter what people tell me. It's my decision whether or not to be the one, and coming back from the dead to finish the job. Super cool. So real quick, my Keanu-sance list. Keanu Reeves really stood out on a 34-story building in that scene where they're trying to get him out of his office and he like almost falls off the side of the building.
No.
That's really him out on the ledge of a 34-story building, and he really does drop the phone off of the well, I don't know if he actually dropped it, but he had the phone in his hand through the whole thing. That was all done practically on a real building, not on a set. We talked about Keanu's spine surgery, and he still pushed through all the trained just as hard as everyone else.
I don't know if it's 100% true, but the Nokia phone that pops out, that was a really big deal, and I'm pretty sure they designed that phone specifically for the movie.
I laughed so hard.
When I got my first two cell phones, the second phone I ever bought, I bought based on that ability to do that. It covered up the keys and it slid open. It did not pop open automatically like it did in the movie, but I thought that was really cool.
Well,
I
yeah.
remember as a kid, that was so cool.
That was my favorite. Like Mouse had one of those, and also just shout out to Mouse when he does that because he's trying to talk to them and talk about it, and then the people come in. He just has like those double machine guns, and he's just like, yeah.
So some of the things I think we've kind of grazed over a little bit here, and I don't want to go back into like a deep conversation about it, but all of the characters, right? We see a number of them like killed off right at the beginning, which really sets up this as like, we got to get out of here, we got to move forward, right? But each of those characters leaves like a weird impression on you because they're actually involved in it. They are obviously like side stories, but I was like, I miss that chick with the blonde hair, like Mouse, dude. He was a cool character.
Well,
And Dozer and all those guys, like, it was weird when they were gone.
it sucks that they get out of the Matrix, to discover their reality, and then they die. I mean, that's sort of what we talked about before, where we know that the reality is a harsh reality, but it still blows that you made it out, and now you're back.
Living in rags and eating a protein powder.
So the last two Keanu things,
Ready.
which are some of the coolest. The scene where Keanu wakes up from the Matrix in his pod and he pops out and he's completely bald. Keanu lost 15 pounds. This was the last scene they shot. He lost 15 pounds and shaved all the hair from his body
I was going to say,
for that scene.
I was looking for a bald cap, and I could not see it in front of the live of me. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah, he actually did that. The number one coolest thing that Keanu did for this movie, he gave away all of his residual payments for the film in order to fund the second two movies. If you look at how much money he gave away, like if you go and you like do the math on it all, it's millions of dollars he gave in order to fund 2 and 3, so that not just that he would have, not that he'd have a job, so that the cast and crew would have a job and they could continue the series.
Dang.
Keanu's the man.
What about 4?
I mean, they announced it. I don't think he's funding it, but
He's funding it with his residuals from John Wick. Just kidding.
Oh, man.
Keanu for the win. He really is, I feel, stepped up his game. One as an actor, going from something like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to other things he starred in to
I said
this.
Step Up. That's my favorite Keanu Reeves movie.
Wait.
I'm not going to lie.
What?
he was
Bill
in
and
a
Ted.
Oh,
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah, I thought you said Andy's in Step Up, and I was
Oh,
like,
I
no.
did too. I was
what?
like, he's in a Step Up movie.
I probably did, because I was like, Casey was talking about like, just to like take a step up, to do something from like Bill and Ted's, and I was like, excuse me. I love Bill and Ted's. That is literally my favorite Keanu movie. It was the first one I saw with him in it, and I love that movie so
I'm not
much.
debating that those films aren't good, but The Matrix is better.
I'm just thinking about Bill and Ted's right now. I want to watch it. Sorry.
Have you
keep going.
seen Point Break? I'm sorry.
I still haven't seen Point Break.
Oh, it's one of
know.
my top. It's
The new one, right? The
Isn't
reboot.
his name like Johnny Utah or something like that?
Yeah, it is. It is actually.
Yeah, the original one, right, is the one you're talking about, not
yeah,
the one
not
they
the
remade
not
like
the remake.
2015.
I saw the trailer for that and chose not to go see that movie.
Tony, thanks for coming on our show.
Thanks for having me. It was really great.
We're gonna bring you back. I've enjoyed it. So you just tell us what movie you wanna watch and talk about, and we'll be here.
All right, I'm game.
As long as you bring yourself again, we'll get you in. No, I'm just kidding. I was gonna joke and be like, as long as you bring snacks, but we don't eat while we're doing this.
My wife told me if I had let her know ahead of time that I was supposed to bring snacks.
Oh.
As
And then you could
love
listen
my
to
wife. But
We're ASMR.
next time. though.
Next time. But no, thank you once again for coming on. The Matrix is a fun film to talk about. Just in closing, does anyone have anything they want to just close it out with? A final statement on The Matrix? Would you do a reboot at this point, or would you keep the original?
Oh man, that's like a crazy question to just throw on. I thought we were like wrapping up.
No,
could
I
talk-
just want to close with that.
This is a closing. I would say no.
I actually
No reboot.
I talked about this with my sister-in-law earlier today because I was explaining. She's like, "I've never seen it." I'm like, "Well, now we got to watch all 3." But I told her that I feel like if they continue it, it needs to be like how Tron the sequel was or something. Just like have Keanu in there to like kind of pass on the torch for the different characters that will be in that universe or whatever.
Tony, you are in luck because like yesterday they announced The Matrix 4 is coming out and it will be starring Keanu Reeves and
Carrie Ann Moss
Carrie
is
Ann Moss, thank
reprising
you.
her role, right? As
Yeah.
Trinity.
To answer your question, I got halfway through this movie and I was like, please. This is before they announced the Matrix 4. I just sat there thinking that this movie could be so cool if they made a modern version of it. And then 2 days later, they announced it. I'm so excited. I don't know if it'll make sense with the story from 2 and 3, or I'm sure they'll find a way to do it because they're actually bringing one of the Wachowskis back to do it again. I can't wait. I think it'll be so cool to see what a modern interpretation of these kung fu fight scenes would be. It's reliving my childhood life. I'm down.
I think they're gonna cut Rob Zombie and Rage Against the Machine for like Skrillex or something.
Yeah.
Bangarang.
What about you, Casey?
I hope that they do similar to a Tron type thing. I don't want them to just scrap the original because I think that, like we've talked about, it's a pivotal film. It did a lot for its time. I'm not ready for them to be like, oh, we're remaking this film. It's not like The Lion King, where they can just remake it, just continue out the story a little bit differently. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. Totally agree. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for listening to us, guys. We've loved talking about The Matrix, so make sure to go see it in theaters when it's out on August 30th or whenever. And then also make sure to tell us, like we do, we are going to change up our intro here in just a couple episodes. I think this is our 13th. So we change it about every 10. We change it after the 5th, and now we're going to do it about every 10. Let us know if you have any favorite quotes that you've heard along the podcast that you'd like us to throw in that intro. We'd love to hear about them. Check us out on Twitter at PauseRewindPLA. We are all over talking about new movie news, talking about the current movies we're watching. Check us out.
Come over to Instagram as well at Pause Rewind Play Podcast. And if you get a chance, rate us on iTunes. That would be awesome.
All right, so we're going to look into a movie that I have not yet seen at all. It's new, and I'm kind of excited to see it. Vince, what are we watching?
Yeah, we're going to switch it up this time. We've been doing all these crazy action movies. We're going to take a left turn, and we're going to go to the documentary-style movies. We're going to check out Apollo 11 next week.
Ooh, I'm very excited, guys. Just by the way, I did see like a little quick clip about it on, I think it was Rotten Tomatoes who posted something about it. Looked super awesome. Super excited to check it out and then tell you guys what we think about it.
And I just like space, so I'm excited to learn a little bit more about it. So yeah, tune in next week. Thank you again, Tony, for coming on the podcast. Super grateful to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was my pleasure.
We love Tony. And we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in on the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast.
Bye.